Beginners, okay, intermediate, advanced. Okay, a good mix. All right, so we'll make it balanced. Why don't just like jump in? We'll get to our intros and stuff, but you're here mostly to kind of hear about what's going on in the interoperability world. Lots of different names. First of all, you got cross-chain, blockchain interoperability protocols, internets of blockchains can be all a little bit confusing. So Ryan, why don't you kick us off by defining what interoperability is?
Yeah. So. Essentially, when you look at all these different blockchains that are out there today, you have Ethereum, Solana, all these different kind of things out there. It's kind of like if you look at different financial systems today. So you have like the United States, then you have like maybe like Argentina, then you have like maybe Great Britain, and each of these things kind of like have their own separate like banks that they like all those citizens can go to. What really needs to happen is like we have this SWIFT system where we can move money amongst all of them, right? And we have other systems where we can effectively like send money through like banks that it can like kind of bounce around. We need something like that in the crypto space. So essentially we need to make everything interwork together in a similar fashion. So that way each blockchain can interconnect and talk to each other.
Nice. And Cole, why is this important?
Sure. So really, I kind of think of it as any computer that's able to talk to another computer. Are the systems able to pass information back and forth in a meaningful way where both systems understand the data? So this is important for any business, any organization, all of us at an individual level. A simple example that a lot of us see, just having your bank accounts, your credit cards, debit cards integrate with your Apple Wallet, with Apple Pay. Perfect example of different systems being able to talk to each other and then create value for a business or a customer. So where we're going today, we're seeing that those needs explode and the types of use cases grow and grow and grow. And the amount of data that's needed to pass back and forth between these different systems to enable those features to happen, it's exploding as well. So lots of new challenges in this space.
Cole, could you tell us a little bit about your background and some of the pain points that you've experienced and you bump into with the lack of interoperability?
Sure. So a little bit about me. I work for the HBAR Foundation. I'm the director of analytics there. And my primary job there is to answer the question, what are our grantees doing on chain? So we give out grants to organizations building on our blockchain to increase the value of the network. And that's only going to be successful if the grants we give out actually translate to network activity. So a big piece of what I do is I measure the network and associate that with our traditional Web 2 database to answer that question. How many transactions are they doing? What's the value locked on a grant level? How many accounts are being created? How many active users do we have? And to do that, I had to build an integration between our blockchain and our traditional, our Salesforce database. So that is one example of how we need to bridge, an example of interoperability adding value there. Before I worked for the HBAR Foundation, I was working for Twitter, helping them bridge their databases together. And before that, I spent time working in the managed service integration industry, where companies will pay tens of millions of dollars to other companies just to simply build point-to-point integrations to make their features work, to make their products work. It's not easy to do, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of people to create those bridges.
Thanks, Cole. Ryan, will you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing as the kind of state of the art in bridging or cross-chain communication, and also give us a little bit about your background?
Yeah. So bridging out there is pretty broad, but it's kind of falling into a couple different categories. So you have like what's called like a burn and mint bridge, which is like what Circle uses. So each of these tokens that you have out there have like essentially an issuer. So someone who created this and can issue out the tokens, create them and destroy them. Those are like seen as like the most secure. I'm a big fan of those because effectively they can, you can give them like say like USDC or like their token. They can take that, destroy it, and then reproduce it on a separate chain. There's no real way to, or at least from what we have seen so far, there's no really hacks or anything like that on that side. Then you have like the more like wrapped token based, which there's a decentralized and there's a centralized version of this. The wrapped Bitcoin is more of like a centralized version. So essentially it's one body that's like wrapping this thing and then like handing it off. And then you have a decentralized, which that's kind of where you've seen all the hacks and all these different problems. But essentially it's all at a protocol level. So everything's handled by smart contracts. The two blockchains, they build out a communication protocol between the two blockchains. They talk to each other. One essentially says, hey, I have the funds. The other one says, okay, let's put that in a contract to hold it and then reproduce a like wrapped token or like a derivative token on this destination chain. As far as like bleeding edge, each of those are kind of having their own different faults, but I do like the burn and mint bridge. As far as my background, though, I'm the founder of a company called SphereOne. We're building an abstracted cross-chain payments platform. Essentially, our idea is to abstract the overall experience for the user. We see it as like a huge hindrance for adoption and allow people who have tokens across multiple chains to seamlessly purchase and buy things with that. Before I was doing this, I essentially have founded a couple other different companies in the past. Both my parents were entrepreneurs, so I've been in the space for a while, kind of seen it growing up, which is pretty cool. And I've been coding for pretty much since I was 10, so it's been fun.
Nice, Ryan. I think of the bridging. I break it down a little differently in my mind. Yeah, because there's like a lot of like tactics, so ways that you can like move information from one blockchain to another. But the standard that I'm seeing emerge is IBC. And within the Cosmos ecosystem, and full disclosure, I'm a huge shill for them, so I'm wearing the shirt just to make it real obvious. I was a co-founder of Tendermint, so I'm speaking my book. But the thing that I think the market is responding really well to with IBC is the fact that the validator set is the same as the protocol validators. So you get all the security from the protocol validators without needing to like stand up this like separate group of validators that oftentimes when you do these kinds of like burn and mints or these other things, there's like a group of people that are controlling that validator set, and so then with a relatively minimal amount of liquidity compared to the whole protocol's liquidity and all the decentralization that's at the protocol level. What do you think about IBC and their approach? Do you think that that's...
Yeah. I mean, I'm up here, totally forgot about IBC. I feel kind of bad, but no, I'm a big fan of IBC. I met some founders of a company called Polymer Labs. They're essentially bringing IBC to other blockchains. So they're trying to bring it over to Ethereum and pretty much anything else they can get their hands on. They're doing some amazing things if y'all haven't seen their project.
Yeah, Layer 0 is also doing some things to extend IBC compatibility. Effectively, IBC natively, you need to have, maybe a little too technical, but full light client support on each blockchain and only works with proof of stake blockchain. So it's sort of like, just imagine like natively, IBC only worked with a subset of blockchains that were proof of stake and like opted in to work with it. And now some of these new technologies, like the one you mentioned in Layer 0, kind of like expand the reach of IBC. And so this is like a big theme when it comes to standards and who's going to win and how are we going to kind of have this true interoperable world. In this true interoperable world, it's like, in my mind, there's like one major player, and then there's like a bunch of technologies that facilitate them interoperating with all the other kind of like smaller players. But what do you think? Do you guys think, Cole, do you think it's a winner take all when it comes to bridges and interoperability, or is it just, is this a massive mess of mesh and bridges and?
Yeah. So I think there's definitely going to be some standards that emerge that most people adopt. Going back in history, we've seen REST APIs really take off as how people move data back and forth between systems at high volume. And I'm glad you brought up burn and mint bridges, because I really like those, specifically the Circle one that you brought up. Very simple to make that API call to the central server that Circle's running. And let's say you have USDC minted on Ethereum and you want to move it to the Avalanche chain or the HBAR chain. It's just one API call away. So that's really powerful. Developers can just hop into that and start making that. And I think that's kind of what's going to determine how much of this gets adopted and how quickly it gets adopted. And we're starting to see those, I think we're starting to see those players emerge with the IBC and the Chainlink stuff as well. So very excited.
Yeah, how are you thinking, since you're in the weeds, building and tooling that's connecting to all sorts of different chains, how are you seeing the development toolkits emerging and the documentation support? Like, how hard is it to use these new bridges and this new interoperability technology?
It's been pretty fun. It's depending on which project you're looking at, they have varying ranges amount of documentation or support. Sometimes you can actually just talk to like the developers themselves that are working on the projects, which that's been extremely helpful because that kind of gives you a little bit more of a, not just a way to like kind of understand what's going on behind the scenes, but like also like kind of a support system. So like if you're having an issue integrating something or using something, they can kind of help walk you through it. But yeah, it's kind of varying depending on like, I guess like project maturity.
Do either of you have any thoughts about like killer apps that could emerge that aren't feasible now because we don't have proper interoperability?
Yes, I can think of several that are simply limited by the data volume. Specifically with blockchain data, pretty much all of these projects are generating tons of data. Any project that's has a lot of transactions is generating more data than you could load up onto a spreadsheet very easily. It would crash your computer. So I think there's a lot of hardware limitations for just simple code running loops on this data to try to run simple analysis, just running basic SQL queries it's challenging to get the data. So right now any sort of ML application, any sort of machine learning or AI application really needs all that data crunched quickly. So I think there's a hardware limitation right now, and I look forward to seeing the hardware side get smaller and faster and consuming less energy. I think that's going to unlock a lot more applications, specifically in the data science side, which is where I get really excited about the future. Where interoperability is more, it's more widespread throughout more applications. Those, the machine learning algorithms and AI applications will be able to acquire more data, bring it together, and come up with new insights that help all of our applications. That's where I get really, really excited about the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I've seen some data aggregation plays because it's important to get those on chain, because what's effectively happening is a lot of that's happening off chain currently, and because of the problem Cole mentioned, there's just bandwidth issues. And so as soon as you pull that information off chain and you try to synthesize it or clean it or whatever, then you can't, you kind of lose all of the trust of everything on chain. How do you know once they cleaned it, they didn't tamper with it? So I think that's spot on. And I don't think enough people talk about how much interoperability impacts a lot of these data plays. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm obsessed with token movement. So my main thing is I think if there was a really good intercommunication layer and people stuck on one standard, the hope is that we could actually kind of get rid of the existing bridging system and more or less perform what's called atomic swaps. So you could essentially just exchange across chains. And instead of doing these whole wrapping tokens, you could just say, hey, I want to take Ethereum and exchange it for Avalanche. And then you could do it in one step instead of multiple.
How do you think that would work?
Well, I think there's either two ways. Either one, you could do a centralized source with that. Or it would be a communication layer. So if you were able to actually facilitate communication amongst all participants, you could probably have this kind of cross-chain AMM or some kind of sort. But yeah, I think probably what will end up happening first is we'll end up having a centralized entity perform this first, because they can kind of forcefully manage the liquidity across all the chains and coordinate the efforts easier than a decentralized one.
Interesting.
Just to add a couple pieces there, I think that's really interesting. So you can have your centralized service, like the burn and mint bridges with Circle, where you send your request to Circle, they take care of it on their end. Or I've seen where the Monero community is trying to put together, their unstoppable swap, their atomic swap, that I guess it's an automated market maker behind the scenes that's taking Bitcoin orders and then matching them with Monero orders in a trustless way. So I think you're going to see two different communities of people that want to use one for, more business applications, more stablecoin stuff, and then the Monero Bitcoin side of people that are doing the full trustless atomic swap piece. So really interested to see how many other atomic swap type programs come online over the next 12 months. That's a very interesting piece.
Outside of the tokens, what are y'all seeing for bridges that are either transporting information like CCIP or that are doing more like, cross-chain, smart contract calls and things like that that are more data-oriented than just token-oriented? Are there any, what do you think about CCIP, cross-chain information protocol from Chainlink?
I'm excited for CCIP for sure. I mean, I think Chainlink has done amazing things so far.
Could you define what it is?
Essentially, from what I understand, it's Chainlink's new standard to essentially create an intercommunication protocol. So essentially, they are trying to build out their own standard versus anything else that's out there. But I think Chainlink, essentially everything I've seen from them so far has been phenomenal. So I'm pretty excited for it. But based off of what I've seen, it's pretty guarded information thus far.
The way I describe it is it's like if you need information, say you're running, Jonathan Libby might be here somewhere. He's he's working on a smart an insurance play. And so if, say there's an insurance play on Polymath or on Matic, and that contract needs data from Solana, then traditionally you would need to put execution code on each blockchain. And now you could just take information from Solana, like maybe a stablecoin depegged on Solana. And so you send that Chainlink would send that information about a price or an activity or on one chain, send that to wherever you want it. And so then you can sort of have all the execution on whatever blockchain is most convenient and fastest and cheapest for you. And then then you can sort of bomb in information, and Chainlink already has all these trusted nodes. And so they're already kind of sending information. We trust them to give us, all sorts of data. So then the jump in logic is, well, maybe we can trust them to give other kinds of data and use it to, power smart contracts. And so again, there's another flavor is, I think it's called Nomad, that does the Evmos bridge. And that's just more general purpose. There's less, within the Cosmos, one bridge is Gravity Bridge. It's really just focused on tokens coming back and forth from Ethereum, but then others are more general purpose that can actually start calling contracts on Ethereum and executing code. So the nice thing is we're really brute forcing all the bridges and interoperability like we tend to do in crypto, is just throw all the world's smartest people and minds at it. Are there any particular bridges that you want to talk about, or anything that's particularly exciting to you in the space?
I mean, Layer 0 is one that I think that I liked quite a bit. There's been a lot of bridges that have had their own issues. Nomad was one, and so we focus a lot on the security piece. He's not here, but my co-founder has a cybersecurity background, so we are hyper focused on security and what we use in our stack. But there's been a lot of different issues. A lot of them haven't really been all that complex either, which has been kind of interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, I like Layer 0 quite a bit. I think what they're doing, the team is probably pretty good. There's a lot of communication protocols that are coming out there, like Polymer that I mentioned, that I really like. And then there's Axelar, which is also a really good one.
What's Axelar's niche? I never quite learned that one.
It's essentially just they're trying to create their own standard. Okay. So same kind of thing, but they want to have their own standard and just intercommunicate, and they want to do it at a very fast rate. I mean, I feel like that's what most of these products are doing, but I just know some people that are a part of that program.
Cool. What about, we haven't touched on Ethereum yet. That's the mother of all bridges and interoperability. What do you think about what's going on with the Ethereum community right now?
Yeah, so I think, I think the Ethereum community is, they're doing their thing, but I think everyone kind of adjacent to the Ethereum community is thinking, how do we position ourselves with Ethereum for the long haul? What's that going to look like for us, and what's our role going to be going forward? So, at the HBAR ecosystem, we have, spun up our Ethereum bridge. We've made sure that's, a big focus of ours, where you're able to wrap your, Hedera tokens on the Ethereum network and vice versa. So I think that's where everything's going for people that want to make sure that they're going to be around in a few years and make sure that their unique features of their chain are going to, you can at least still get that done with a Solidity contract on Ethereum. So I think that's kind of where things are going for everyone that's sort of around Ethereum. But again, those data volume problems are going to persist. A lot of these, issues that, were kind of more top of mind in the IT community in the, 10 years ago, like big data, information, or Internet of Things, those two things specifically, I think are, major challenges for pretty much all chains to really grow and get to that next level where we're unlocking all of these new features quickly with very short development cycles. So those are the things I'll be looking for over the next few years.
Yeah, it does seem like all chains are bumping into this problem now. For a while, there were, like chains like Solana, which are positioning themselves as more of these like really large mainframes. Think about like Solana as a mainframe, and then like Cosmos or even Ethereum now is more like a choose your own device. And with a mainframe, you don't need to worry about interoperability. You just have huge amounts of throughput, huge amounts of speed and performance in like one location. But now I think, and what we're seeing is even those folks that were kind of use that as an initial design principle are saying like, hey, actually, it's not that useful to, be on an island and be Galapagos Solana Island over here. Like we need to figure out a way to work with the rest of the ecosystem. And we also have to like, at some point, if we're successful, this chain too will fill up. And so even the Solanas of the world now I'm seeing putting more and more emphasis on bridging. And my bet is that the people that take bridging at like the foundation and really think thoroughly about that at conception instead of it being kind of an afterthought are the ones that will succeed the most and are most likely to be the standard. Go for it. Oh, 5 minutes. Well, but yeah, we have 5 minutes left. Any questions from the audience? Any of y'all want us to touch on? Someone's got something. There you go.
Okay, sorry. One thing I've heard about light clients is that the more complicated the contract call gets, the more expensive they can get on gas. Are there any solutions for making light clients cheaper to deploy across multiple different chains? Or is Atom still kind of leading that?
Yeah, that's actually what Layer 0 does. And so when you have the persistent light client, it's like you're in this like constant communication and that's what creates all the gas. And so you're constantly pinging the other blockchain. And so that's why it gets expensive. And Layer 0's innovation was to effectively batch those communications. And so it's just sort of on demand. And they use the oracles from Chainlink to do it. And so they say whenever they need information from another chain, they say, okay, so there's, so that's a good example of, we got pretty good with a standard, but, we realized there were some faults and the community's coming. And you work with Layer 0. Did I categorize that correctly?
Yeah, that was perfect.
Yeah. And anything else? Somebody's got something. We got time for one more. Back there? Yeah. I can repeat the question too if it's.
Thanks. So a lot of the talk about interoperability is moving things across one chain to another. But what about interoperability in terms of having data stored on each chain in a format that's universally understood? So you wouldn't necessarily have to move things across chains. Do you guys think there's a future for that type of technology?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that's a big problem we face in our ecosystem is that the API is not familiar to a lot of people. It's not, you don't process it in the same way that you would on the Ethereum, retrieving data from the Ethereum ecosystem. So yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of developers know how to get data in a certain way right now. For example, people know how to do SQL very, very well. And a lot of ecosystems are not able to, they don't have an SQL terminal where you can just go get data straight from the ecosystem. So yeah, I think making databases, data structures that people already know how to get data from, absolutely, there's a massive opportunity there.
Nice. Yep. Is that it? All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Appreciate that. Yep.
All right, can you just keep the round of applause going? Appreciate everybody for being here.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Cryptocurrent. Cryptocurrent is a cryptocurrency and blockchain education platform that's bridging the gap between the curious newcomers who are just discovering the space and the thought leaders who are shaping its future. All opinions expressed by Richard Carthon, the Cryptocurrent team, and their guests on this show are exclusively their own opinions. This show and any other Cryptocurrent production is exclusively for informational purposes.